I live in Norwich, the largest city in Norfolk in the east of England. It's a wonderful place, one of the best preserved medieval towns in Europe, full of charm and history. But one place I often drive past records an altogether darker history connected to World War II. I often drive up Higham Road, near the city centre, as I go about my business, and stuck at traffic lights one day, I noticed something very peculiar across the street. A row of houses besides a large Gothic church. Nothing particularly strange about that, but if you look at the end house on the left, a section of wall continues on in a strange fashion, as if another house or houses once continued along the terrace and was excised by a giant knife. You can see internal chimney breasts running up the outside wall to the roof above. It hit me quickly. I was looking at World War II bomb damage. The house or houses at the end had evidently been badly damaged and demolished, builders leaving just a neat section of the front of the next house. I've long known about the Norwich Blitz of 1942, when the Luftwaffe pounded the city mercilessly over several nights, causing immense damage and loss of life. But I didn't believe any bomb sites still existed 80 years later. You notice also that the corner of the road has no buildings on it, just a tatty yard of some kind and a grass area occupied by advertising hoarding. This indicates the entire corner of this street was wiped out and never rebuilt. When I paused by the same spot again some weeks later, being stuck in traffic, I started to notice other odd features of the Crossroads. Higham Road is mostly occupied by Georgian and Victorian buildings, but at this crossroads, all four corners have modern buildings or just grassy patches. Moving around from the original bomb site, we see a 1950s-built pub, now converted into a Tesco Express supermarket. Then across the road, a large grassy space with advertising hoarding next to existing Victorian buildings. Then across the next road, a very modern building occupying the corner, buttressed against more Victorian houses. I decided to dig further, and lo and behold, the Crossroads is a survivor of the Norwich Blitz. In 1942, Hitler ordered retaliatory attacks on English cities, following an RAF raid on the historic German port of Lübeck. Since the 1940-41 Blitz against London and other cities, German bombing had calmed down considerably and had been limited to hit-and-run attacks as the Luftwaffe was mostly transferred onto the Eastern Front in the war against the Soviet Union. A follow-up raid on the German city of Rostock in early 1942 had proved the effectiveness of the British theory of area bombing. That is a heavy raid designed to destroy not only industrial and military targets, but also the workers, their homes, and their morale.
Steady. I got the bullseye with the last one.
On the 14th of April 1942, Hitler ordered retaliatory strikes on regional English cities to undermine civilian morale. These series of raids came to be known as the Baedeker Blitz, after the tourist guidebook, after a German propaganda ministry spokesman reportedly said, quote, "We shall go out and bomb every building in Britain marked with 3 stars in the Baedeker Guide," end quote. Basically, the Luftwaffe would target Britain's history, and the raids were made on the historic cities of Exeter, Bath, Norwich, Canterbury, and York. Though not as heavy or devastating as the 1940 raids on London or the infamous raid that destroyed Coventry, a great deal of damage was nonetheless done to historic buildings and housing, and a considerable death toll caused. Norwich was struck on the 27th to 28th and the 29th to 30th of April 1942, with more attacks in May and a very heavy raid on the 26th and 27th of June. The Luftwaffe dropping a mix of high explosives and incendiaries that caused huge fires. Overall, 229 Norwich residents were killed and over 1,000 injured. Many historic buildings were destroyed, including several important churches, and residential areas like Higham Road were badly damaged. Out of 35,000 domestic dwellings in Norwich in 1942, 2,000 were completely destroyed and 27,000 damaged in some way. A map exists that shows where bomb hits were recorded by the air raid precautions, the air raid wardens. The Higham Road, Crossroads was flattened, the bomb strikes corresponding to what we see on the ground today. At least 2 bombs landed on houses adjacent to the Baptist church, heavily damaging the church and the row of terraced houses next to it, these buildings being completely burned out. Evidently, the last houses towards Higham Road were completely destroyed, and in reconstruction, just a neat section of outer wall was left standing as the other properties were renovated. Opposite the church once stood the Dolphin Pub, and this building was wrecked by a direct hit and later demolished. The second intact bomb site of the Crossroads is this section of nondescript grass. Here is the same view in 1942. The British Gas Light Company building completely demolished by a direct hit, and the site never built on again. Finally, across the road, the buildings here were again totally flattened by bombs in 1942, but this site was later redeveloped into a pub and other buildings after the war. It is interesting that 8 decades after the raid, you can still find 2 World War II bomb sites left to their grassy anonymity in the midst of a city that is rapidly developing and expanding. I guess that very few people walking past or driving past this site today realize that they are quite literally at the crossroads of history. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.